Last time we talked about a lot of things, but our main focus was Tamar, and she was married to Judah's first son, Er, and then he was a wicked man, and God killed him. And as was custom, Tamar was given to his next son, who God also killed, and Zerah, I think, was the next son. And then Judah didn't want to give his youngest son to Tamar, thinking that she was like a black widow or something. So he refused and told her to go back to her home. And she realized, well, because he was still young too. His youngest son was still underage, so he wasn't even eligible for marriage yet. So when Tamar learned that he had come of age, she posed herself as a prostitute in front of the city gates as Judah was coming through, and ended up sleeping with him. And then he found out and was mad. So that was where we left off last time. So we are now in chapter 39. So I think we probably need a recap of what happened with Joseph as well. So Joseph, oh yes, yep, of course. And then Tamar actually had 2 children from that relationship with Judah there. And again, Judah is the line where Jesus came through. God uses the most broken people to do his work. And then it just, after Genesis 38, we switch back to Joseph. So what happened with Joseph? Joseph was the oldest child of Jacob and Rachel, which was his beloved, the one that he actually wanted to be with. So he's the oldest son, and he was the favorite son. And Joseph was given a coat of many colors, and again, that's a mystery because a coat is something you put over, and the colors signify different things. And his brothers were very jealous of him probably because of a lot of reasons, because his father favored Joseph's mother, and then of course favored him as well. And then Joseph had a dream of how his brothers would bow down to him, and because he was an arrogant youth, he went and was telling his brothers about his dream, all haughty, and it made his brothers even more upset with him and more hateful towards him. So they had this plan that they were all going to gather him up and kill him, so that they wouldn't have to contend for their father's love anymore. But what happened was, I forget which one of the brothers, but one of them said, let's not kill him, let's just throw him in this cistern and tell our father that wild animals got him. So as they were about to throw him in the cistern, some Egyptians came by, and they decided to sell him into slavery instead. So they did that, and they took his coat and killed a wild animal and put blood on it, took it back home to Jacob and said, oh, our brother was taken by wild animals. And Jacob was very distraught and said, I'll die with this mourning for my son. And actually, when I was reading it again this morning, Reuben had said that he was going to go and rescue him afterwards. Right. But again, he was sold into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. So when he got there, again, it's a similar thing as to what happened with Abraham, that God was with him, and it was evident, and everywhere he went, he was just blessed. So in Genesis 39, it says, Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders. Again, those, I'm sorry, I misspoke. They were descendants of Ishmael that purchased Joseph as a slave. So they took him to the Egyptians, and he was purchased by Potiphar. Now we'll touch on that again in a minute, but so Potiphar was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and the Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. So Potiphar's home was also blessed because Joseph was there. And this pleased Potiphar, and soon he made Joseph his personal attendant and put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops flourished. And something I read, it said all Potiphar had to worry about was what he wanted to eat that day. So he had no concerns. Everything was all running very well. And Potiphar, the name Potiphar means belonging to the sun. So Potiphar, this is verse 6. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. That's what I said. Joseph was very handsome and a well-built young man, and Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. "Come and sleep with me," she demanded. But Joseph refused. "Look," he told her, "my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." So he's saying here that he's not saying that he would be sinning against Potiphar. He's more concerned about sinning against God. So this woman, who's most likely a very attractive woman, is coming after Joseph, who is a young man, and it just is a testament to his character that he's not swayed by youthful lust to sleep with his master's wife. And again, it's not, he hasn't chosen to be in this situation. He was sold into slavery. So Potiphar's wife, again, since this is a woman's Bible study, to think about the type of men that were most likely in authority in this time, chances are he probably wasn't very kind to his wife, just because of the way that the women were viewed in this time period. And it doesn't say whether or not he has more than one wife. So she may be his only wife, or he may have other wives and other concubines, as was customary in the time. So she was obviously not satisfied sexually with her husband, because now she's seeking out this young man here to sleep with her. So verse 10, she kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. Again, that's probably pretty challenging, because he's working in this environment that he's coming and going, and she's probably always there, and obviously always bothering him. An interesting thing, though, in order to preserve her, he didn't go to Potiphar. He never once went to Potiphar to say, listen, your wife is trying to have sex with me here. I'm just trying to do my job, and she is pushing herself on me. So this is a continual thing that he is encountering, and he is able to maintain his chastity here in order to stay in the good graces of Potiphar and to be able to do the thing that he's been assigned to do here. So and I would venture to say, because of the next verse, that she was openly probably saying these things in front of other people and possibly groping him, and who knows what. So verse 11, one day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work. Again, that's why I'm thinking that there were other people around when she was essentially sexually harassing him. So she came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, "Come on, sleep with me." Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. When she saw that she was holding his cloak and he had fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. "Look," she said, "my husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, but he left his cloak behind with me." So just thinking about what kind of woman she was. So this gentleman was taken from his home, sold into slavery, and everybody knows that he's a slave here, not there of his own account. And this woman is basically, like I said, like sexually harassing him while he's trying to do his work, and he is an upstanding young man and is just trying to do the best that he can to not offend this woman and to still do the job that he's supposed to be doing here. And she grabs him and he wiggles away out of his cloak, and then now she's saying that he tried to defile her. So she's a great lady here. So she kept the cloak with her until her husband came home. Then she told him her story. "That Hebrew slave you brought into our house tried to come in and fool around with me. But when I screamed, he ran out, leaving his cloak with me." So Potiphar, again, which he just blindly believes his wife, and doesn't ask Joseph about anything that Joseph was doing. He just believes what his wife is saying here, and immediately is furious, and he takes Joseph and throws him into prison, where the king's prisoners are held, and there he remained. Again, it doesn't say how long he's been serving with Potiphar, but it was enough time for Potiphar to see the Lord's favor and to raise him up and to be grateful for him. And then all of a sudden his wife says he tries to do this thing, which I'm sure Potiphar knows is out of character for Joseph, because they've obviously formed a relationship here, but he takes the side of his wife, and I mean, maybe to save face himself, and throws Joseph in prison. So verse 22, before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of, verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. So thinking, again, there's other instances I think about, like Paul and Silas in the prison, where most people, if they got thrown in prison, it would ruin their day. But because of the character of these people, and not only their character, but their relationship with God and their trust in God, that they're able to flourish in situations where most people would not. And just thinking about how, so Potiphar's wife probably thought she got the upper hand, but again, Joseph is continuing to have the favor of the Lord no matter what situation he's in. So chapter 40, this is where I'm going to kind of zip through this a little bit. So Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, and the baker offended their royal master. And so the Pharaoh threw these guys in jail where Joseph was, and in the palace of the captain of the guard. Okay, so Joseph is no longer in, I'm sure that initially when he went to prison, he was in a dingy cell with, dirt floor and bread and water and all that stuff. But now, because of the favor of the Lord, he has rised up through the ranks and is now in the palace of the captain of the guard, which is still an imprisonment, and also remembering that he's still a slave in this land. So these people remained in the prison, and they each had a dream, and Joseph was able to interpret these dreams, and then it's interesting because he says in verse 8, nobody can tell us what our dreams mean, and Joseph says, well, interpreting dreams is God's business. So he tells them the dreams, and then Joseph interprets the dreams, and then they do come to pass, and it's passed along to Pharaoh that, so he actually asks them, please remember me and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. So I guess it's still not too great of a place. He says that he was kidnapped from his homeland, and now he's there in prison, and he did nothing to deserve it. So I wanna take a pause here, and we didn't really speak about what this would have been like for Rachel. So when her sons came back, well, not her sons, I guess her half stepsons, I don't know what they would be called, but Israel or Jacob's other children come back with her firstborn son's coat, saying that he was killed by wild animals, just thinking, and all of this time, so Joseph is here growing up, and his mother believes that he is dead. And so Joseph is actually, he's not dead, he's flourishing here, despite what Potiphar's wife would have had. She would have had him thrown in jail and whatever, because he wouldn't fulfill her lusts. So he rises up through the ranks here, and they tell Pharaoh that there's this dude in the prison that can interpret dreams after Pharaoh has a dream. And he brings Joseph up to interpret his dream. It says, we're on chapter 41. This is 2 full years later, after the baker and the cupbearer were released, when Pharaoh has his dream that turns out being a dream about the famine that's coming to the land of Egypt. And in verse 12, This is where the cupbearers say, there was a young Hebrew man with us in prison who was a slave of the captain of the guard, and he told us our dreams, and everything happened according to what he said. So Pharaoh sends for Joseph, tells him his dream, and Joseph interprets this dream here. And Pharaoh is very impressed with what he has to say. In verse 32, Joseph says, therefore Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 good years, having him gather all of these things. In verse 37, Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. So he decides to, and he says, can we find anyone else like this man, so obviously filled with the Spirit of God? So he appoints Joseph to be in charge of his court, and all of the people will take orders from him, from Joseph. So he says, only I will rank higher than you, Pharaoh. Only Pharaoh will rank higher than Joseph. And he says, I put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. And he takes his signet ring and gives it to him. Again, that's like the highest thing that you would give to your son. So I don't know, maybe Pharaoh didn't have children. I don't think it says whether or not he did, but that's a pretty high honor for him to give this ring to Joseph. And he dressed him in fine clothes and hung a gold chain around his neck. And then Pharaoh gave him a new Egyptian name, which is, this is verse 45, it's Zephanath Paneah, which means, well, it has a few possible meanings. Belonging, nope, that's the other one. The Zephanath is the treasury of the glorious rest, and God speaks and lives. Another interpretation was that each one of the letters in this new name was a characteristic that Pharaoh saw in Joseph. So some of the things were seer, redeemer, prophet, supporter, interpreter of dreams, clever, discreet, and wise. So that's his new name that he is given. And he also gives him a wife whose name is Asenath, which means belonging to the goddess Nerth, which is the goddess of creation, wisdom, weaving, and war. So she was the daughter of Potiphar. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. If we recall from our study with Dinah had a, well, it was in some of the Hebrew traditions, it was said that Dinah had a child as a product of the rape that she had, and she dressed or bundled the child up, took the child to the Egyptian gates, and the child was accepted by a barren woman who just happened to be Potiphar's wife. So in the Jewish tradition, there is a, it's highly likely that this woman here that is now Joseph's wife is also his niece, the daughter of his sister Dinah. So he was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land of Egypt. So 30 years was when the men of the time were coming into authority. So the men, when they were 30 is when they would stop being, there's two words for son in Greek. It's huios and, oh goodness, I have to look it up because I don't remember. It's huios and teknon. So the huios son is the son that is the one that's taking on the father's legacy, and the teknon son is the child's son. So it would be around age of 30 when a child would step into that authority position. So that's where Joseph is, and that is where we are going to stop.